Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. I'm Gustavo, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today for the first session of the Triple Helix series, a series of meetings discussing the Triple Helix concepts in climate change, energy transition, and gas utilization. You will know more about this event, of course, today, but you can also follow us here in the links that will be shown today during this presentation, this broadcast, and of course get more information as you visit our web pages and our social networks. I am the Director for Diffusion of Knowledge and Innovation for the Research Center for Gas Innovation here at the University of São Paulo in Brazil. And today, this morning in Brazil, this afternoon in the UK, and in other places in the world, we'd like to welcome those interested in this topic of energy transition, climate change, from the lenses of the Triple Helix. This is a series of events, as I mentioned. Today is only the first one, and in total, from the end of the year all the way inside 2021, we'll have 4 sessions. 4 meetings like this. They're brief meetings to start the conversation and to actually make people to know each other and network properly in this topic. So this is the opening of the Triple Helix series. Now, the goal of the series, the whole series, is to discuss Sustainable Development Goals, the famous SDGs, into the energy transition and climate change mitigation. But of course, this could be done from various perspectives. And in our setting, the way we are organized, I mean, those who are involved in this event, we come from the perspective of the Triple Helix. The Triple Helix will be broadly explored and explained very soon. But from the beginning, I would like to point out how I loved this idea of the Triple Helix being represented by a propeller, a ship propeller. Of course, you could think of as a DNA strand or even a cable or anything related to that image of the Triple Helix. But as a naval architect, the idea of having 3 blades, 3 helical blades, generating thrust to move us forward is very, very beautiful and very interesting. So I hope that this propeller, this Triple Helix propeller, this triple-bladed propeller will be able to thrust to push us forward in the discussion and the development of the field. That's our objective with these meetings. Now, this is a meeting organized by the Research Center for Gas Innovation and by the Sustainable Gas Institute. These are 2 institutions hosted at the University of São Paulo in Brazil and at Imperial College in London. And you can find more information about the series in this link that is shown in the screen. Just follow the link to the Triple Helix series. And of course, we have to start thanking our sponsors. Shell sponsors both research centers, and FAPESP is also pretty much involved, not only in Brazil, but also in sponsoring research worldwide through the collaboration of the RCGI and the SGI. So, on behalf of the RCGI and SGI head, I would like to welcome you this morning. Now, today we have a live conversation from the perspective of the universities. And USP and Imperial College invited 2 partner institutions, the London South Bank University and the University of Surrey, to join us today and discuss how the Triple Helix could be involved or pushing forward the SDGs in climate change and energy transition, looking from the perspective of one of the blades, which are the universities or academia. So today we have a discussion from 4 academic partners, of course, talking about the SDGs from this perspective. Very briefly, this is our plan for today, our program. We have very brief introductions now, and then I will give the chance for our invited speakers, to present some hot topics, their personal view, what is hot, what's going on in this field, how the SDGs could be tackled from the university or academia perspective. And finally, we have a very interesting panel for discussions where the hot topics will be brought live during discussions with all the participants of today. This is the plan for today, the list of participants. I will just leave these on the screen for a minute if you want to pause or to print screen. But we'll go through this list later, presenting one by one, and I'm sure Karen will also introduce all the speakers. But just so you can follow their names, we have Dr. Adam Hawks from Imperial College, Dr. Flávio Urno from the University of São Paulo, Dr. Stelvia Matos from the University of Surrey, then Professor Simon Philbin from the London South Bank University, Professor Marcos Bucherich from the University of São Paulo, and joining us today as well, co-hosting and organizing this event, Ms. Karen Mascarenhas from the University of São Paulo. So these are the list of speakers we have for today. But before we move on, I would like to invite Professor Giulio Meneghini, who is the Scientific Director of the RCGI, just to greet us this morning and say his welcoming words. Giulio, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gustavo. It's a pleasure to be here to give a welcome to all participants. It's a great pleasure today to open this event, this webinar, and this series of events regarding the triple helix innovation model. And today it's a very important day for the RCGI. We have just closed the first 5 years of our center. And then we are starting from today and hopefully for the next 5 years, a new phase that will be directly linked to the Brazilian NDCs, to the Sustainable Development Goals, as Gustavo has just mentioned. And then we are very proud to start this new phase, and we are going to become the research center for greenhouse gas innovation. And we are going to have 5 new programs that will be directly linked to the topics that are going to be discussed today. And I'd like to welcome Adam Hawks, Flávio, Stelvia, Simon, Marcos Bucherich, and Karen. And hopefully I will have many other opportunities to meet you all during these next 5 years of RCGI. Then thank you very much to you all. Thank you very much. Back to you, Gustavo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Giulio, for your welcoming words. Hope you're excited with the program and also with the panel coming up later on. Thank you, Giulio, for your welcoming words. Right, now I would like to invite Ms. Karen Mascarenhas, and Karen will gladly introduce to us the idea of the triple helix. Karen has been working with this triple helix model for some time, and she had the idea of this event and put everybody together. Thank you, Karen, for doing that, and you're now able to present us what is the plan with the triple helix.
Thank you, Gustavo. Oh, well, good morning, Brazil. Good afternoon, UK. As the coordinator of the Triple Helix series, I would like to welcome you and take a few minutes to introduce the Triple Helix series. The series was conceived aiming to discuss ways to align our projects and actions to impact the Sustainable Development Goals positively. So here are the Sustainable Development Goals. They were launched by the United Nations in September 2015, after an extensive public consultation to build the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which are called SDGs. And they unfold into 169 targets composing the Agenda 2030. These were officially adopted by 193 countries that later set national targets. You will know more about this in other presentations, but I just wanted to introduce the idea. The SDGs seek to address many global challenges as poverty, hunger, inequality, climate change, peace and justice, and protect the environment and ecosystems. It intends it intends to take care of the planet and people in ways that make it possible to attend the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations. It involves everyone, from the national government to the regional and local governments, to businesses, the universities, the media, the NGOs, and the society as a whole. It makes all accountable and to achieve the goals and leave no one behind. The Research Center for Gas Innovation, seeking to collaborate in the global concert effort, has its mission aligned with providing cleaner and affordable energy to all, and also taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. To embrace such challenges, RCGI works to build strong partnerships with national and international collaboration, as you noticed by the panel invited to speak today. RCGI also has a close partnership with the Triple Helix structure in which it is formed. The Triple Helix innovation model is a concept and a practice introduced by Ecovitz and Leidersdorf between the 80s and 90s, and that consider innovation as a result of the effort of academic, industry, and government working together to bring discoveries, research, basic scientific approach into the market through entrepreneur and industry that can benefit a community, a region, a country, an industry sector. It consists in extending the role of the university as an entrepreneur hub to develop and implement innovation. It is fostering an innovation ecosystem. So RCGI is formed like that. So by USP with science and research, by Shell with the practical applications that we introduce into industry, and supported by government through the funding agency of the state of São Paulo, FAPESP. And the idea is bring with this new startups and licensing of new technologies that can be developed in the area of energy and climate change. Within the University of São Paulo, many businesses have emerged as Nubank, Gympass, iFood, 99. So the idea of the Triple Helix series is to instigate the reflection, analysis, and discussion of the three parts that take part and that work together to contribute towards the SDGs of the United Nations. The Triple Helix series is an accomplishment by my participation in the joint fellowship program between the University of São Paulo and the Imperial College London, with the support of CNPq, which is the Brazilian Federal Funding Agency, and Shell. The Triple Helix series consists of 4 events that aim to focus on the discussion of each of the helix. Today, academics and researchers from Brazil and UK come together to express their views on the possible contributions of academia to the Sustainable Development Goals. The next session will focus on the government, agencies, and regulators in the same matters. And in the third, the industry role and their contributions. The last 4th event aims to consolidate the lessons learned by all parts working together and share the results of these discussions in scientific publications. So, if you're willing to be informed about the next sessions, please don't forget to register at the link below. Okay? And now I handle back the screen to Gustavo to announce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much for your presentation and introduction, and congratulations on putting it together and inviting this collaborative network of friends who became friends now, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss and to collaborate in this initiative. Congratulations and thank you very much. Right, now we move on to the hot topics. This is the time where we start the conversation. And we would not like this event to be just a series of presentations or formal lectures. We would love this to be a panel of discussions and for you to join us and to contribute to that discussion as well. And the way for you to send in your comments and questions is, of course, through the chat. So there's a live chat. You can send in comments, just typing them in on your YouTube, on our YouTube channel, or even your Facebook webpage, wherever you're watching this broadcast. Just type in your comments and questions at any time. And do not wait for the panel to start so you can send questions, but do send your questions during this time of brief presentations of the hot topics, because then we'll be ready to maybe take some of your questions into the discussion later on. So again, repeating that, just type in your questions in the live chat, that all the questions would appear to us and we'll be able to select them and move on. Thank you very much. And please do contribute. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome today Dr. Adam Hawks. Hello, Adam. Good to see you.
Hello.
How are you doing? Hope you're fine in London.
We are surviving, Gustavo.
Good to know. Adam is the director of the Sustainable Gas Institute and also a faculty member at Imperial College. And Adam will present us today his views on the hot topics on this big theme of the SDGs from the perspective of the Triple Helix. Adam, please do take over and present your views. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gustavo. And well, also thank you very much to Julio and Karen for the kind introduction. We're very proud of the interaction with the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. I was just thinking that through over the past few minutes, and actually it's almost 10 years since the initial discussions with various funders and with USP about various collaborations that we could make in the field of gas sustainability as that relates to natural gas, hydrogen, and biomethane. So great collaboration, and then this series I think is an interesting example of how that is working. Okay, I don't want to dwell on that anymore, because I want to just give you a few thoughts on the topic I want to present today. So just a very short presentation, only a few minutes, but just a few thoughts on the Sustainable Development Goals and our field of particular interest to us at Imperial, which is energy transitions and climate change mitigation. So I want to talk about this just to throw a few thoughts out there, and I'm sure the other panelists will have other ideas, and maybe we can have an interesting panel discussion at the end of that. So the talk today, or what I'm going to focus on at least, is firstly, how are the Sustainable Development Goals currently treated in climate change mitigation analysis? So what is the current thinking there, and what progress particularly has been made in looking at what happens with the Sustainable Development Goals in terms of climate change mitigation, and I'll say why that's important in just a moment. And finally, just some brief thoughts on next research steps in assessing Sustainable Development Goals inside integrated assessment models. So firstly, just a tiny bit of context. I'm sure most of the viewers know about this already, but climate change is a big deal. It's one of the grand challenges of this century. So you see here in this figure, on the vertical axis is the net CO2 equivalent emissions globally. So these are the things that contribute to climate change. On the horizontal axis, you see time going out all the way out to 2100. So really long time horizons of climate change. The top line on this figure is pretty much a business as usual, or a baseline situation where we continue to emit greenhouse gas emissions to the atmosphere. This results in very significant climate change. You see there 3.2 to 5.4 degrees Celsius at the top line, and very different world to the one we live in today, with significant dangerous environmental impacts. The two lines at the bottom are the interesting ones, the blue line and the grey line. The blue line is essentially a Kyoto Agreement line, or we limit global warming to 2 degrees. And the grey line is the Paris Agreement line, where we agree to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees. The interesting things about these is you can see how radically the energy system, or those emissions, change from 2020 onwards. Very, very steep decline and crossing zero at about 2050 in the case of the Paris Agreement line. So globally, the world is actually removing CO2 and other greenhouse gases from the atmosphere from 2050 onwards. I don't need to say what an incredible technical, economic, interdisciplinary challenge that is. So I'm going to talk about integrated assessment models. So these models typically used by organizations like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change to assess climate change. There's, say, about 31 models were used in the fifth assessment report, and they produced about 1,000 scenarios. So these computer models are one of the key tools that lead to graphs like the one I just showed you. And they're very interdisciplinary. They're very much a combined analysis of technology, economics, land use, and climate. So very sophisticated, large models of the whole world where we try to assess these things. They cover the whole energy system. They usually cover all the way from production of resources all the way down to final end use of energy. So what we actually use energy before, all the conversions, all the transport in between. And they cover all sectors. That's a figure of our own integrated assessment model on the right, which is called MUSE. So it covers all sectors of the economy. And you see there an interaction with a climate model. So you see that's the integrated nature of these models. So if we're going to think about these in terms of sustainable development, what does it look like? So as Karen has introduced very nicely, these have come along since 2015. They're basically 2030 goals. And there's a whole bunch of them. They're really a lot of different areas covered by the goals with regard to sustainable development, economics, social and environmental aspects. The question I have here is, how do we model the impact on those sustainable development goals within integrated assessment models, recognizing that climate change is a grand challenge and the world has to change radically to deal with climate change. So what impact does that have on the sustainable development goals? Well, the first thing we note is complexity. The sustainable development goals really interact with one another, and this is a key point, is that there is a risk to non-climate sustainability objectives if you follow a climate change mitigation pathway without thinking about them. So you've got to be very careful about that. They can do things like slow economic growth. They can change how fast a country grows. They can exacerbate inequality, all kinds of issues which can negatively affect sustainable development. So an example there on bioenergy crops. So if we use land for bioenergy, there's interaction potentially with food production. It's one example of that. So it's been recognized that there are synergies and trade-offs between the sustainable development goals and climate change. Of course, climate change mitigation being one of the development goals. So there's been analysis of this, and it's primarily been done from a study by von Stepchow in 2016, just after the goals were released. So that's an interesting one, but then developed quite substantially in the special report on 1.5 degrees. This is a summary of that report. Essentially what they found was the synergies, the positive interaction between climate and the SDGs exceed the negative interactions. So that's a key point. And if you look at the figure on the right there, which is taken from that report, you see that in general, the blue bars there, so this is maps the climate interaction with each of the SDGs. You see the blue bars generally are more positive than the brown bars. And also, generally in the energy demand sector, you see a lot more synergies. So some great synergies in the energy demand sector. However, there's a bunch of issues there. Really, that interaction depends on the pace of your mitigation, also how you go about it, which options you choose. So a lot of complex problems there, which universities and academic research really need to solve. Also, COVID-19 has had a rather negative impact here. So any goal in the SDGs that relies on growth will probably not be met. So issues for the SDGs more broadly. So what are these synergies and trade-offs? Well, there's a list there. I'll just pick out one. So the synergy being cities and communities. So that's seen as the strongest synergy between climate and any other SDG. Some really good co-benefits there. On the negative side, perhaps there's an issue with hunger particularly. What if our our changes to the energy system to mitigate climate change exacerbate hunger. So some problems that we might want to address. So just summarizing here, just 2 more slides. There's been a bit of work on this area, but by no means enough. So the SR 1.5 report I just mentioned noted a bunch of things like higher lock-in from delayed action. So if we mitigate climate change slowly, there's bigger distributional impacts. If we delay our action on climate change, we need more CDR, which is carbon removal, essentially, from the atmosphere. And this leads to greater risks, particularly if it's done in an insensitive way through things like BECCS, which have an impact on land use if they're overdone. So I don't want to say more about that, but other than to say that really when you're thinking about your pathway of climate change mitigation, you really need to think about interaction with the SDGs and think about something which is context-sensitive design and policy design cognizant of distributional impacts. So what are those next steps for research? And this is a Triple Helix event about research, so it's good to finish on this point. Basically, not a lot is known about this space, and a lot more research is needed. Emergent field, very much so. It's very difficult to model in an integrated assessment context, extremely data intensive and highly interdisciplinary. It's a very complex problem to solve. Also, the SDGs are focused on 2030, whereas climate change, we often talk about 2100. So how do we deal about that time frame difference? What happens to sustainable development later on? But action is urgently needed, and there's an opportunity for academia in that literature is really sparse, so we can certainly make a contribution there. And some interesting developments on entry points to the SDGs. So to reduce down that complexity of 17 SDGs to just say 6 entry points. So we can think about this in a clearer way and provide policy-ready insights, so things that governments can actually do something about. Okay, so that's all I want to say. So a very brief introduction, and I hope that's useful. And happy to hand back to you, Gustavo.
Thank you very much, Adam, for your very nice insights. I got some good notes here. I think there'll be a very good conversation later on. Thank you, Adam. I would like to invite now our next guest today, who is Dr. Flavio Urno. There we are. Thank you, Flavio. Flavio is from the School of Business Administration here and Accountancy here at the University of São Paulo. Thank you, Flavio, for joining us today. I will share your screen now, and please do take the floor and bring in your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Gustavo. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you today. I would like to thank you, the RCGI, for the invitation. As Gustavo mentioned, I am from the Business School of the University of São Paulo, and I will try to bring this presentation to you, a discussion about the main roles of the higher education institutions regarding the Sustainable Development Goals. As you can imagine, it's not a simple mission to talk about this, especially in 10 minutes. So I will bring you a broader perspective to talk about these main roles of the university, of the higher education institutions, and how can help to foster the Sustainable Development Goals in all their complexity and all the difficulties we have to talk about, to deal with them. Okay. This is a photo from our campus, where this is a very green campus, as you can see, for those who don't know, and we are going to talk about this relationship, or these roles of the universities, the higher education institutions, related to the SDGs. As I said, it's not simple, so I try to bring you a broader perspective through the discussion of this framework. Actually, it's I did a presentation in Japan before, of course, the pandemic, talking about these topics, emphasizing the role of our university, what our university has been done regarding the SDGs. And in that occasion, I used this framework to guide our discussion. So according to this framework, we would have four main dimensions, or four main roles for the higher education institutions to do to address the sustainable development goals. The first one, in green, Adam has mentioned before, the research. Research, of course, is a typical role of any university, and good university, and we can see that as he also mentioned, the interdisciplinarity and complexity of subjects and themes that can be addressed by research. So of course it's important, and we can notice by literature, by the publications, that a lot has been done regarding research. The other dimension is education. As you can imagine, education for creating the competences, for fostering the competence in our students for them to think as SDGs as a guideline, as even values to be followed when they go to their professional activities. We can see this also has been done a lot. There are lots of publications about these topics, about the education for sustainable development, competencies for sustainable development, and even the green jobs, SDG related jobs, how to foster this competence in the future professionals or the current professionals. The other two dimensions this framework bring is the operations and governance, more related to what the university does in terms of sustainable development, in terms of sustainability, the SDGs, and we can notice there some rankings that evaluate the higher educational institutions in terms of their performance in these areas. The two main known rankings are the Times Higher Education and the Green Metrics ranking. I would like to mention that our university is placed in the 7th position in the Times Higher Education out of 470 universities, and in the Green Metrics ranking, the position is 18 out of more than 700 universities. So we have so far our university has been done a good job in terms of the SDGs inside the campus. And the other one is actually related to the event today, that is about external leadership, how to foster this partnership, of course, related to the SDG number 17, how to make the advocacy for these teams in every kind of relationship with stakeholders. Okay, so this I think it's a good framework in order to summarize what higher education universities can do related to the SDGs. I would like also to discuss, this is also from this same source. Actually, I forgot to mention, this is for the SDSN and the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. It's from the Australian South Pacific. It's very interesting source. I would like to emphasize, and it's interesting because they show that universities can help, higher educations can help the SDGs, that is in the right column, by providing innovation solutions, fostering the values, etc. But not only, but they can also, SDGs help the universities by being a guideline, by being maybe a philosophy, by being a framework for the university's actions, and all the four dimensions I've just mentioned. So the outcome from this from these roles would be represented by creating knowledge, fostering learning, demonstrating as acting in terms of fostering the SDGs, also measuring the impacts or creating and measuring impacts, and fostering the collaboration among all the stakeholders. So this is the idea, the general idea, and I would like to emphasize that education and the higher education institutions, of course, would be at the core of the SDGs. This picture, I think it's very interesting because, as I just said, they provide all these solutions, and they create this scenario that every stakeholder interested in SDGs would be would use this outcomes. I would like to mention that it's also important to emphasize that everything would be created based on in terms of value, a purpose, and dialogue among all these stakeholders, because it's about sharing these values. SDGs is about that. But I would like to mention that we still don't have much idea about the effectiveness of the higher education institutions performance. This is actually some things we are working about in terms of research, and we hope we will have some answers to these questions in the future. I would like to finish my presentation showing you these reflections, and this is part, as I mentioned, from the presentation that I mentioned before. We have some issues, some important issues that we can identify in terms of this relationship between higher education institutions and the SDGs. As you can see, of course, I wouldn't read any of them, but we have these different issues. For each issue, we can have a diagnosis or try to understand what is behind these issues, and we can also have an opportunity how to provide a solution in terms of what the higher education institutions can do to foster, to provide a better scenario, even better performance in terms of the SDGs implementation in any kind of stakeholder the higher education institution has. We can see some words, important words here, that are lots of things, lots of practice, different contexts, different priorities among the SDGs, the interdisciplinarity. They are also always present in terms of the SDGs discussions. But we also can also have lots of solutions and lots of opportunities for us to the society in general. I think that this is it. I would like to discuss more in a few minutes when I come back. Thank you again for the invitation. Thanks for the opportunity to discuss this very important subject. And I would like to look back to you, Gustavo. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Flavio, again, for your very nice insights as well. Thank you. Now we would like to invite our third speaker today, who is Dr. Estelvia Matos. Good afternoon to you, Estelvia. Hope you're doing well in Surrey. And Estelvia is from the Surrey Business School at the University of Surrey. And Estelvia, thank you for joining us as well. And we're listening your hot topics and your comments on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gustavo, and thank you to everyone for this incredible opportunity. It's an honor to be here, and I'll try to contribute to this event. I thought I could build on some of the comments that Adam and Flavio mentioned in terms of complexity and the need for this multidisciplinary perspective when dealing with sustainable development goals. So I thought I would talk about development and diffusion of technology innovation for SDGs and overcoming challenges and exploiting opportunities. please allow me to start by, how can I progress my slides, Gustavo?
Gustavo, you just click on the screen that you are presenting, your PowerPoint screen, then you can move right and left, or just click on the screens that your slide will advance.
It's not working. I'm sorry.
No?
No. Oh.
Just click on top of your screen, the one showing the presentation,
Yeah.
and try pressing enter or spacebar.
Yeah. No.
Nope. Would you like to share your screen again, maybe? Perhaps that
Yeah.
should unshare and share your screen again, or restart your presentation.
Sure. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Ready?
Perfect.
Good.
Right, so please allow me to start by saying a few words about the Center for Social Innovation Management. So our social innovation management perspective is the creation of solutions that benefit society as a whole rather than private individuals. So it's inherently multidisciplinary and it requires embracing cross-sector dynamics and interaction. So this aligns quite nicely with the purpose and the aims of this particular event. So how we will see it is that for that, we need to collaborate with many different areas and perspectives, because it's important when implementing and benefiting from innovation that is looking towards sustainability, that we look at two particularly important points. One is whether the technology, it's feasible, and the environmental side of it really works, and the commercial and organizational viability, is it there? So this needs to be clarified and identified, but this is not enough. We also need to check whether there are social and cultural knowledge that are required in order for this innovation or new idea to be accepted by the users, by the population. And that involves ethics, law, cultural norms, and political influences. So we have the codified knowledge part and the social political knowledge component of putting an innovation for sustainability into the market and effectively being adopted. Just a quick overview to show that our center is indeed multidisciplinary. We have affiliates from the engineering department and schools, from business schools as well, of course, from School of Law, Department of Politics, Biosciences and Medicine, and Psychology. These are internally our affiliates from the University of Surrey. And from our external members, we have also a variety of disciplines and skills that are contributing to our aims. So we have, of course, people from the business school as well, but also Faculty of Medicine, and also from governmental bodies such as ANP, the Brazilian Oil and Gas and Biofuels Regulatory Agency, and a number of other international universities in Europe, like Finland, Germany as well. Our motivation is, we think that it's important to reflect on the fact that achieving SDGs is challenging because they require balancing these three very complicated dimensions: economic, social, environmental. And then, there are trade-offs, as Adam mentioned in his presentation, as well as synergies and coordination amongst stakeholders that are related to those dimensions, right? So the recent word, if we may call disorder, has further exacerbated these challenges, and it turns things much more complicated and challenging, I have to say. So we do have, very familiar struggles and issues and, efforts in understanding and addressing climate change debate and controversy. There are issues, there are emerging, such as nationalism, fundamentalism, and populism in some countries. Brexit, you see, it's definitely it's affecting and it's going to affect the way that we implement and see the whole sustainability issue. Social media and fake news has had a great impact in how we implement sustainability, and obviously very recently the COVID-19 pandemic, which has exposed some cracks, but also identified some opportunities that we need to explore in order to really get good ideas being implemented. So sustainable innovation and entrepreneurship for social inclusion are very closely connected. So the interesting thing is that they are both a panacea and a paradox, because a key economic driver and most viable mechanism to address sustainable development are seen as, through sustainable innovation and entrepreneurship, but they also cause many social and environmental problems. So these are very, very difficult challenges for businesses, policymakers, and in advanced countries, but also in emerging economies. So here are the opportunities to engage with scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs to develop those sustainable technologies. And we also believe that a great opportunity is to look into social impact investment, which can direct, the development of amazing opportunity in terms of sustainable technology. And my third point is on responsible management. How this whole issue has brought up the importance of looking to organizational misconduct, corruption issues, looking more closely and reflecting more closely about the outcomes of public and university research. And what I particularly like is unintended consequences of innovation and entrepreneurship for sustainability. So we all know that there are great opportunities and benefits in adopting and going forward to implementing these kind of ideas, but we do need to be aware and attentive to some unanticipated consequences as well. This is a classic example of unanticipated consequences. We have, the father of green revolution, Norman Borlaug, who is known as the man who saved 1 billion lives from starvation. However, as a consequence, we have a spur in the global population that ended up leading to some important environmental challenges that we are facing right now. So what we do at the center, we apply the TCOS framework of innovative uncertainties. So this is the way that we see as a means of finding an opportunity to tackle some of these challenges. So TCOS stands for Technological, Commercial, Organizational, and Societal Framework of Innovative Uncertainties, and is based on looking for what are the hurdles to innovation that must be overcome, and what are the levers that need to be exploited and legitimized so that innovation can be accepted by the public. This is a classic framework that was developed by Clark and Wheelwright from Harvard and MIT that basically explains that at the beginning of an idea or a concept, that's where you have the most opportunity to make changes and adaptations. Once that concept becomes at the stage of the commercialization, it becomes much more difficult, time-consuming, and expensive to make changes in order to address some particular issues that are related to the implementation of that particular technology. So the best time to make that changes and to address sustainability is in the beginning of the conceptualization of that innovation. This is just an extension of the same idea. So they suggested that in the beginning, here is where you have most opportunity to make change. You should look at technological issues and commercial issues. What we've added is that in addition, you have to look at the organizational issues. the capabilities, intellectual property protection, complementary assets. So just because the technology works, and it is commercially viable, it doesn't really mean that the organization can profit from it. And we also add that you need to look at the societal issues, how diverse secondary stakeholders, NGOs, communities, etc., may affect or be affected by that technology. So the team works very straightforward. Does the technology work? And this is the domain of scientists and engineers. The commercial uncertainty is about is it commercially viable? And this is the domain of marketing, business analysts. And the organizational uncertainty, does the organization have the complementary assets and capabilities to appropriate the benefits? And this is the domain of the strategists, right? The societal uncertainty is interesting because now you need to look into, is it acceptable to civil society? And this is actually the domain of a combination, and here's the triple helix, because a little bit of a diversity of components in organizations need to work together in order to identify the societal issues. So the TCOS works as a series of hurdles that need to be overcome in order to get that innovation implemented. There is a video that was developed by California Managed Review. I won't show here because it will take too much time. But you're welcome to take a look if you are interested. And in terms of methodology, very quickly, how we go about doing that. So first, we consult with the scientist teams and developers on how we what are the key stakeholders and what are the key issues related to that particular innovation. And then we go to the field and interview those stakeholders, trying to identify what are the opportunities or hurdles related to that particular technology. So from there, we identified all the stakeholders, and we start identifying the technological, commercial, organizational, societal issues related to that particular innovation. And we'll bring back this information to the developers in a cycle until we see opportunities for improvement and changes early in the development phase of that technology. So TCOS has been applied in a number of projects. The first one was Genome Canada, large-scale genomics and proteomics research, where we're looking to lignin transformation technologies for sustainable products. More recently, we have a project in progress, which is the future of social innovation in the energy sector, more specifically waste-to-energy strategies in poor urban areas. And very recently is the ERC Synergy Grant, Geoengineering and Negative Emissions Pathway in Europe, which will investigate environmental, technological, social, legal, and policy dimensions of geoengineering technologies, such as solar radiation management and negative emission technologies such as greenhouse gas removal. So we'll be applying TCOS analysis in those opportunities. So TCOS does not provide answers to specific problems, but acts as a search mechanism to get innovators to ask the right questions for more efficient diffusion of sustainable technology innovation early in the development phase of the technology. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussions.
Unfortunately, I think you're muted, Gustavo.
Thank you, Simon.
It happens to all of us.
Thank you very much, Stelvia. That was what I said, and thank you for your very good insights as well. And I'd like to invite now Professor Simon Philbin. Thank you, Simon, for joining us today. Professor Philbin is professor from the London South Bank University. Simon, we are listening to your comments.
Okay, thank you. I'll just set up the slideshow. Hopefully you can see that coming through now. So yes, thank you, Gustavo and Karen and the organizers of this event. for the kind invitation to speak. So thank you to USP and Imperial College for organizing the event. And as Gustavo says, I'm the director of the Natu Puri Institute for Engineering and Enterprise at London South Bank University. And I'm going to be speaking about our research on investigating the measurement of SDG impact for infrastructure projects in the construction sector. I'd also like to acknowledge the key role of Paul Mansell, who is the doctoral researcher from LSBU, and the research that I'll be talking about is forming the main part of his PhD studies. Okay, so of course we've been speaking about SDGs and in the context of climate change and energy, and so we've already heard that the SDGs were implemented in 2015, 17 SDGs covering a broad range of areas, which includes 169 specific targets and extended to include 244 indicators. These global goals, of course, have been agreed as part of an international framework and they're national targets. And so the question really arises, how do we translate national level targets into real world and measurable activities for organizations and projects? Thinking about the specific case of infrastructure projects then, and we see some data here on the level of investment in infrastructure and infrastructure projects. And it's been projected that there's potentially $1 trillion worth of investment in infrastructure. Maybe that's being impacted, will be impacted by COVID-19, but nevertheless, infrastructure is one of, if not the major areas of investment across the world. It's been identified by McKinsey, a report, that this investment in infrastructure not only represents the possibility of stimulating economic prosperity, but also the ability to reduce poverty, raise standards across the world. And so therefore, measuring SDG progress by infrastructure projects has this major potential to both raise standards and guide financial investment decisions. But the question arises then, how can we do this? How can we measure SDG and sustainability performance on projects and specifically infrastructure projects? Thinking about some literature, so there's been an article, for example, by Thacker et al., and they identified that, of course, infrastructure is part of SDG 9, as it would be, it's in the title. But it's also recognized that infrastructure systems either directly or indirectly influence all 17 of the SDGs. Also, thinking about how we would measure the performance of programs and projects, we can think about a perspective called the theory of change, where you take account of successive stages involved towards moving eventually to longer term outcomes. Other work on considering project success by Schenhard and De Vere have really advocated a systems perspective to measure project performance, a more holistic, wider perspective, moving beyond the so-called project iron triangle. And then, of course, influential work by Elkington, really advocating the need for the triple bottom line of economic, social, and environmental considerations to underpin sustainable development, and also known as the people, the planet, and the profit. And through considering the literature and concepts, we were able to develop a set of propositions, and our methodology is there. And so our propositions for this research study, we found that there is currently a gap in the knowledge base in regard to understanding how to measure SDG performance at the project level. Also, P2, the definition of infrastructure project success, really perspective, the broader view. The third proposition, although there is knowledge on the importance of sustainability for infrastructure projects, there's a lack of awareness about how to actually do it on operational projects. The fourth proposition, the measurement of SDG performance should really accommodate the triple bottom line. And then the fifth one, measurement of SDG performance, should include a full project life cycle perspective from activities, inputs, outputs, and eventually outcomes. We designed the research methodology to be based on a mixed method approach involving a survey of engineers and interviews with senior executives in organizations. We then carried out triangulation of the analysis, further validation with case study work, ultimately trying to improve our understanding of how to measure SDG performance on infrastructure projects. And so the survey of engineers, 325 engineers, 176 of them from Europe and other engineers across the world. Interestingly, so 45% of those engineers had 20 plus years experience, so a lot of experience. And when they were surveyed, it was over 85%. So the top right there, over 85% found that they agree or strongly agree that measuring and reporting SDG impact is important. So there's a strong desire to do this. Interestingly, when they were asked which SDGs are a priority for engineering firms, they found SDG 6, 7, 9, and 11. And so clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, industry, innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities were seen as the SDGs having a higher priority for the engineering firm. And then other highlights, for example, the bottom right there, the greatest challenges for measuring SDG impact on engineering projects in the built environment, just under 60%. Success definition. How do you actually define the success, whether or not you're achieving those SDG targets because of the sheer complexity of all those targets? Business priorities, competing demands of businesses, leadership, an excessive outputs focus, insufficient tools, as well as a lack of education in this area. They were all seen as big factors that represent challenges to measuring SDG impact. In terms of the interviews that were carried out, so 40 senior executives, CEOs, and corporate heads of sustainability were interviewed, and the research partnered with the Institution of Civil Engineers on this work. This was a qualitative framework was assembled. You can see the nodes and subnodes, and then the keywords derived from that. And that framework was used with the NVivo software to guide the qualitative analysis, because this was a mixed method research study, that the quantitative coming from the survey and then the qualitative from the interviews. And just a few further highlights from the interviews. So we can see the top right there, some of the data, kind of the results from the qualitative analysis of the interviews. And that was text analysis, examining the theory of change. So the constructs, the components of the construct of the theory of change, which is the causal logic chain that goes from inputs to activities, outputs, impacts, and eventually outcomes. And so data, we can look at word frequency data and quantitative analysis that provides support to there being this theory of change as part of the recognition of how you would measure sustainability on infrastructure projects. In terms of the summary of the findings from the survey, and so I mentioned over 85 or 88% of those engineers clearly responded that firms need to be seeking new ways to measure and report SDG impact. In terms of the challenges, the top four there, so defining success, the business priorities, leadership, and a focus on outputs, the short-term immediate outputs rather than the outcomes. And then to follow on from that, the top-rated opportunities for SDG impact, leadership again. So leadership, both potentially challenge and an opportunity. Also an opportunity around increasing education, provision on SDGs and SDG impact skills pool, as well as complementary business skills, commercial skills in this area. In terms of the summary of the findings from the interviews, I won't go really through all of these now, but essentially the qualitative analysis, we were able to provide clear evidence, empirical evidence to support propositions 1, 3, and 5, and through inference from the analysis, we were able to find evidence to support propositions 2 and 4 as well. Finishing off in terms of concluding remarks, so really the results indicate about our research study that SDG measurement practices are embraced in principle by infrastructure and engineering organizations, but they do tend to be problematic in practice. And we've identified a series of challenges that need to be tackled, but they go hand in hand with also opportunities in this area. Study, and we found that there is a kind of a so-called golden thread that goes from reporting frameworks at the project level and where it's possible to assemble data and information to take that reporting from the project level all the way up to the organization level. And ultimately that could then be linked to national level targets. The research findings also indicate that whilst it is possible to make decisions on investments, financial investments, really, of course, we need to be guided by the triple bottom line of economic, social, and environmental considerations. And of course, we need to also recognize not just this excessive focus on short-term outputs, but also the longer-term impact and outcomes. And our research potentially can inform other researchers interested in this area, measuring impact and outcomes on projects. I can hopefully help to serve to identify industrial companies to consider how they can implement measuring SDGs on projects or within their industrial project portfolio. We've been able to write up some of our research in the journal articles that are listed there, some of our recent articles, and we're planning several more to come out next year. We'd also like to acknowledge the collaborative partners, the Institution of Civil Engineers, University College London, and the Building Research Establishment for their inputs into this research study. And thank you for listening. I look forward to the panel session. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I make sure myself I'm heard now. Thank you, Simon, very much for your comments. We appreciate that. Please sit, have a chair, sit down, as we would like now to invite Professor Marcus Bucaric from the University of São Paulo. Where's Marcus? There you are. Thank you, Marcus, for joining us this morning. And again, we are ready to listen to your thoughts. Marcos, now it's your turn. I think you are muted now. Can you open your microphone and start again? Another time? It's still muted. There you go. Yeah.
I couldn't unmute myself. Sorry. Thank you very much, Gustavo and RCGI, for the invitation. Although I am a coordinator of one of the programs of the RCGI, the BEX program, I will not talk about this today. My viewpoint today that I would like to bring to you for discussion is about the cities. This happens because I participated in I was one of the authors of the special report 1.5 of the IPCC, and this is one extract of a few things that I learned there that is related to the systemic view of the problem that has been already raised by the colleagues before me, especially Adam, that presented mostly about the chapter, the report. So those are the four main transitions that we can see as a result of the passage through 1.5. Agriculture production, the urban transitions, the ecosystem and forest transitions, and the coastal systems. They all correlate to each other, as you see here. The issue about the cities was so strong for us, especially the members of the Chapter 4 of the special report, that we wrote another report about the cities after that, with recommendations of what to do. The problem is that most people will be living by 2050, 2060. Most people in the world will be living in cities. We expect that. And then most of the problems will be there as well. And the impacts of the climate change on cities so becomes really, really important. You see there in my transition, in the urban transitions, you can see that bioenergy is key in the mitigation side, and also the food production is quite important as well. But there is a correlation with the ecosystems and forests because the use, for example, of CDR, of carbon dioxide removal techniques, especially the one associated with bioenergy, will backfire if we don't do the afforestation and deforestation. So this systemic view is quite important for the cities, and we have recently published a paper in the journal Advanced Studies in Sao Paulo, proposing a new theory for cities. This is the theory of the urb system. The urb system would be looking at the cities most from the point of view of ecology. I'm a biologist. That's why I bring this point of view, and my colleague Arlindo Filippi as well. So the urb system is a complex system that is the city, which you can see here in the middle, and through agriculture, imports, industry, all these materials enter the system, and we need water and energy, and this system produces waste. So the sustainability will be higher if we use less water, less energy, and we process better, producing this material is producing less waste. I call this the primary urban system, and you will understand why I say that later on. There is a secondary urban system that is composed of several tertiary urban systems, that is health, education, housing, communications, laws, financial system, commerce, transportation, culture, tourism, food, security, and education. If these systems, if these tertiary urban systems work harmonically, the secondary urban system will be working in such a way that sustainability will increase. This is our point of view. So the system is very complex, and we see society in this way. For example, take culture, politics, management, right? They have several elements that can interact. You can see here the correlations within every one of them, and they correlate among themselves as well. And with these, we can understand the systemic behavior of a system. And the city, as well as the society, is really complex. So the main message here of this idea is that it's a sort of urban jazz that depends on all the systems, the environmental systems, the agriculture, everything is brought to the city. And to solve problems in a sustainable way, we have to use complex solutions. So complex problems require complex solutions. So we can see here that, for example, climate change, it cannot be only climate change, but I would take climate change. If climate change affects agriculture, for example, you see on the top left side here, then you have an effect in the city. If there is lack of water or lack of energy, or the industry has problems and you don't have the materials, then you have a problem in the city. These 4 points of attack here are, I consider them the most important points of attack, because if one of them is really attacked, for example, if a city gets without energy, what happened just now in a major city, in a major capital of the state of Amapá in Brazil, then there is collapse. It's the same for water, it's the same for food. So this is really a very important point of attack, the primary urban system. But the secondary urban system can also be attacked. You have all of them here, but if you attack one of them, for example, say you are attacking the environment. When you attack the environment, you have problems in the urban system, but you won't have a so big problem that would provoke a crash in the urban system itself. So, and the city can then be more resilient to attacks. So climate change attacks in different ways, depending on the hierarchy of the attack, depending on the penetration of the attack into the hierarchy of the urban system that we propose here. Just to bring you one example that is a very actual example is the case of pandemics, for example, for São Paulo. So you see the colors here are showing the impacts of the pandemic. The strongest impacts are in red, and just following the color spectra. The blue are low effects. The yellow is medium effect. So you see in São Paulo, for example, we had major effects on health, of course, the pandemic. Education stopped completely. Tourism also was stopped. But transportation continued to work. And the laws were not modified a lot, but a little bit. Communications continued, and the environment was even better if you think that there was less emission of CO2. The other idea about the cities that I would like to put forward here is that to get a public policy that really works well, we have to think of the society as a triangle where the universities or the knowledge production systems, the universities and the research centers and the intellectuals will produce solutions, will produce ideas. And then I separate here the research oriented by theory that can be a research holding future prospects and the research oriented by problems. So this is thrown inside of this triangle that I call here the primordial soup. So the solutions, they float inside the primordial soup, and the society has aspirations and point out problems. So the media, the art, and the society are pointing problems that also float in the primordial soup of the triangle. When a solution meets a problem, then politics should, clever politicians should take this and use this to make decisions. So they have this 4-year agenda, and they can, if we think that if the politicians would be clever and efficient and think sustainably, they would take they would put in their agenda, in the top of their agenda, the problems that already have solutions, so that things could go faster, and choose problems that are important and take these problems to the university to produce the solution, so that we could go faster with for example, with problems like the climate change that need faster decisions and decisions that are sustainable. What we did in relation to the SDGs and to look at the SDGs for a city was we produced a guide for sustainable cities that is totally based on the SDGs. So one example here, this is the method that we use just to show you, for example, the SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. For every one of the SDGs, we had 21 specialists working on that, and we produced nexus. This nexus, in this case, for example, the main nexus was education, health, and environment. And then from the nexus, we derived 3 actions maximum. And then using the SDGs targets, we designed up to 5 items of agenda. So these items of agenda were then were classified into priority things that are here. I will show you better in the next slide. And then with this in hand, we did a lot of discussion, several workshops, in fact, of discussion and curation, taking the replications out, looking at the adherence to the 2030 agenda, looking whether it was mayor's responsibilities for São Paulo standard or not, and if it was mandatory or not. Then we organized and diagrammate and produced the document. This was from July 9th, 2020 up to October 5th, 2020. So what we produced then is this document. That is the Guide for Sustainable Cities. It is in Portuguese just now, but we are starting the translation into English and Spanish first. And the guide has an introduction, that is what I just mentioned to you. And the items, we produced 193 items of agenda. These items are all based on the targets and the SDGs, and they are arranged in the document as an SDG focus. I will show you, I will not show you this. This is just the SDGs. What are the items that are under every SDGs? And this was also arranged as the priority themes. The priority themes that we had were sanitation, health, climate change, transversal themes that we could not really classify, sustainable social assistance, job and income, transportation, education, and sanitation. So just to show you one page of the document here, for education, for example, we have the items of agenda for that. Those are linked for poverty or for hunger, etc., etc. So in this way, people can use this guide without having even to go to the internet to look at the targets of the SDGs, because we put everything there, and we have a table that cross all the information of the SDGs with the targets of the SDGs and with the items of agenda that we derived from our work. So the final messages are that cities are complex systems, the urban systems, that cannot be treated with simple policies, but a combination of public policies. The public policies to deal with the urban system must be science-based. Otherwise, we can derive to directions that are not really important and waste time and money with that. Urban systems display different levels of vulnerability depending on the type of attack. That's the idea of the penetration of the attack in the hierarchy of the urban system. And the use of the SDGs can guarantee that the achievement of high levels of urban systems resilience. So the main idea is that using the SDGs, we could turn our cities more resilient. Every city in the world could use this or adapt this in such a way that the local solutions for every city would help people to live better and avoid problems with the climate change. That was my message today. I thank you again, the RCGI, for the invitation.
Thank you, Professor Bukarich. Thank you very much again for your insights. They're all very good insights today. So we're coming now to our last speaker, and I would like to invite Karen Mascarenhas, who will lead us now in her own insights about this topic. Thank you, Karen, for...
Thank you. Thank you, Gustavo. Well, now I just want to comment a bit about the leadership and the Sustainable Development Goals. And for that, I would like to invite you for a quick opportunity to reflect on what kind of leadership would make the achievement of the SDG targets possible. Well, it seems pretty clear by the colleagues' presentations that the world is transforming rapidly, becoming more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And if you've heard this before, it is the so-called VUCA world, a term that was born in the American Military College to explain the multilateral world perceived as emerging after the Cold War. This concept was further developed by Warren Bennis and Bert Nainus to reflect on leadership. Crises have shown us that we have to change. The evidence are overwhelming that the world needs us to change. Analyzing these signs, we notice that science has told us that climate is changing. Many of my colleagues have mentioned that we are interfering in the ecosystems so far down that new and more severe illnesses are emerging rapidly, as the pandemic of the coronavirus or any other kind of mutation that is becoming from this. Yet, a significant part of decision makers and the board of the company and the policymakers, or even some academics, thinks they can do nothing about this. On the other hand, a teenager in Sweden thought she could, and her individual action moved a lot of the other kids and adults to demand a better future for the planet and for them, as well as for the generations to come. Becomes clear that to gain a social license to operate, business and governments have to consider the public perception. In many countries, the citizens they do not trust their governments to take the necessary actions to ensure their economic development together with their well-being. Inequalities, poverty, and hunger are still great problems for humankind. Justice is being questioned. Movements are gaining force as the Black Lives Matter. All these issues are part of what the Sustainable Development Goals mean to address. And we ask, who are the leaders that will help us cross the bridge towards better results? First of all, they are not heroes. They do not have all the answers. They are not better than all the rest. Research has shown that they are authentic, honest, courageous, have a sense of purpose, are based on values that include others. They are aware of who they are and what they stand for. They have an understanding of the consequences of their acts and use their power for the well-being of others, aiming to benefit society. They take the responsibility to make a difference in the world, inspiring others to follow their vision. They adapt to circumstances. They embrace challenges, and they also they're open to trying the best and accepting failure as a path towards learning and doing better next time. They collaborate and work together with and as a team to build results. They believe in the potential of people and help them develop. To fulfill their talents, they incentive diversity and respect different opinions. Alongside economic growth, they seek for innovation and sustainability, preserving nature and ecosystems. Many of these characteristics and competencies are within you and me. In the everyday activities, that makes us accountable to lead in one or another situation wherever you stand, in academia, in business, in a government role, or in society. That is why the triple helix of academia, business, and government, with the concerted efforts of people working together, has the duty to seek for ways to contribute towards the achievement of the Sustainable Agenda 2030 targets. Envisioning the need to drive the efforts towards this endeavor, the RCGI has been discussing the Sustainable Development Goals since 2018 and assessing the outputs of the projects through the SDG framework. Now, at the end of its first 5 years of existence, just completed on the 30th of November, we are we have produced a report of the paths for sustainable development to summarize the results achieved as a research center and the actions that we have taken to contribute to the goals. It also contains the fourth round of assessment, in which researchers were asked to rate the impact of their projects to each SDG. The report is being launched today, and it is available for download from the RCGI site. Some highlights include the vision of our diversity formed by national and international multidisciplinary teams, and the power of the triple helix structure of the University of São Paulo, the funding agency FAPESP, and the company Shell, leading to expressive scientific production. The center is committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. The result of the assessment shows that researchers perceive the SDG 13, like climate change, the affordable and clean energy, and the industry innovation infrastructure as the ones that are mostly impacted by the projects. They also recognize the contribution to good quality of well-being, of health, also for the responsible consumption and the partnership for the goals. So, well, I thank you all for listening and invite you to view the reports through a short video. I also thank the group of researchers that together with me produced this report, namely Driele, Alexandre Gallo, Ana Neto, Ana Fontanelli, and a special thank to Luiz Guilherme Zacarias that made this video animation. Well, after that, we go to the panel. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Karen, for your insights as well, and thank you for sharing us and launching the paths for development from the RCGI. Thank you for sharing us this report.
Thank you, Gustavo.
Right, I think we're ready to start some discussions and some comments from the audience as well. Please do keep sending in your comments as I invite my fellow speakers here this morning, Adam, Stelvia, Marcos. Where's Marcos? There he is. Right, I think we are all here except for Marcos should be reconnecting. He should come live soon. Well, thank you all for sharing your thoughts and very interesting insights from a broad perspective. They all tackling the university as the center for this discussion and academia as well. So they are all research based impact and information from us all. I'm just checking here if Marcos is connecting again. Right, let's wait for Marcos to come. Right, what I would like to do now, please do keep sending in your comments through the chat, but I would like to go just round in this, not a round table, but on this rectangular screen of discussions through our panelists, just to hear a quick answer from maybe one or two points that you were instigated by during the other presentations, okay? So maybe you want to answer to some comments from the audience or perhaps answer to some of the points raised by the other speakers. And Marcus should be coming live soon. I would like to start, right. Thank you, Marcus, for joining us. I think the connection is reestablished now. I would like to start with Simon.
Sorry.
Maybe Simon, who is on my right-hand side, top right-hand side, and then we go round after Simon to Flavio, Karen, Marcos, Estelvia, and Adam, and counterclockwise. Simon, please.
Thank you, Gustavo. And yes, I was really thinking about a common theme that came across with many of the presentations was the complexity, or the may describe it as the VUCU, or just the sheer complicated nature of dealing with the SDGs. And really, I suppose, well, of course, mitigating climate change, reducing carbon emissions itself, it can be considered as a complex system. And then if we add into the mix how to link those to the SDGs, we're potentially dealing with not just a system, but really a system of systems. To use the terminology. And, water, there is the built environment, there is the natural environment, there is industry, commercial. And so I think certainly using a systems engineering perspective, constructs and frameworks such as system of systems, it can be one way of unteasing that complexity for what represents a global challenge across many different industries, but of course very much for the oil and gas industry. So just some initial thoughts there.
Mm-hmm.
Good, thanks. Yeah, I think this came also in Adam's and Stelvia's presentations as well, as how the SDGs interact with each other. And I would like to use a very nerdy analogy here. They're a very non-linear system. Like there are vectors in a vector space that are not linear independent to define this space in themselves. So a very good point. Complex systems is indeed a very good approach. Flavio, maybe you'd like to add your comments in response now?
Yes, Gustavo. I received a question in HITA about the measurement of the advances in SDGs by universities. There are some ways to do this. There are the rankings I mentioned. There are several rankings. Actually, I mentioned two: the Times Higher Education and the Green Metrics. They have specific methodologies. We are working these rankings and using these rankings basis for research too. Besides the rankings, there are lines. We have a guideline actually we are doing here in Brazil. I didn't mention before, but there is a network called PRIME, Principles for Responsible Management Education. It's a kind of branch from the Global Compact from the United Nations, specifically regarding what we call the responsible management. And we are developing here in Brazil a guideline for universities to report their performance in terms of SDGs. But I'd be glad to share with Ivan and everybody else these talks. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you for your first insights, Flavio. Maybe now Karen would like to add something?
Yes, I thought it was very interesting because how challenging it is for us to understand in what ways we really contribute towards the SDGs. And I mean, in research, in business, in government, and even as a citizen, you know, how do we get closer to things that are very important because they are global matters, and how do we contribute, even though it's small, even though it's, you know, so it's realizing and recognizing that. So I thought it very interesting for us to discuss this from very different, you know, perspectives, talking about the innovation, talking about cities, the university, about the projects like infrastructure projects, and also understanding it by the point of view of the impact of the scenarios for climate. That's what I would say for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Professor Bukeric would like to add something.
Yes, Simon brought the idea from the engineering. I'm a biologist, so the systems biology, we behave like ants, right? And the ants are very, as we all know, the ants are very, very sustainable. They produce very sustainable cities. So the idea, my main idea is that I believe in the global. We discussed a lot in the IPCC, the global, from the global point of view. But I don't think there are solutions in the global level. We will have to have solutions at the local level because the diversity is too high. So the type of energy, for example, if you take Brazil or Brazilian cities, even inside Brazil, we use bioenergy a lot. But in certain cities, the bioenergy is cheap enough, so that there's a crossing with the economy. The bioenergy is cheap enough to be used, but in other cities, we have to transport it too far, and then diesel or gasoline is better. But if you go to other countries, then you don't have any bioenergy. So the solutions will be really different depending on the place we are in the planet. And the communities, and the idea of the herb system is that the ants themselves have an herb system, right? It's an ancient way of animals to congregate and to be sustainable, right? So sustainability was not invented by us, in my opinion. We are just borrowing what is evolution already produced in a very nice way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the analogy, Marcus. Very clarifying as well. Stelvia, would you like to add in your comments?
Yeah, I think I'm going to build on Marcus' comments about local solutions. I strongly believe that that's the way of going if we want to really see some progress done in this in terms of sustainability. I think we are right in the middle of a huge shake-up in terms of traditional and conventional way of thinking. So the macro energy systems, I think it's time to reconsider and reflect on whether this is the way to go. And absolutely considered the right solution for the right location, right? What works in a developed context may not work in a developing or emerging economy context. So there's a feedback, which we call social legitimacy. It's crucial to really see the important results. And I absolutely love the biology connection with that. Actually, I used NK theory developed by Stuart Kaufman in my work on complexity because I think that's absolutely fantastic. So I'm very glad that we talked about that. And I think perhaps what I wanted to say is it's time to challenge old concepts, challenge the concept of growth, challenge the concept of sustainability, and I'm very optimistic that we are in the middle of a huge opportunity to see amazing transformations, and I can see already excellent progress and paths being opened in that direction.
Right. Thank you, Salvia. Adam, would like to make your initial comments?
Sure. Thanks very much. Interesting comments from everyone. So I'm going to be provocative and controversial to spice things up. So I just want to firstly point out that the world is not going to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. This is not going to happen. I mean, it's a well-recognized fact that even before COVID-19 hits, the world was not on track with most of them, and now is not going to hit any of them which require growth of an economy. Now, I wouldn't go as far as to say that means the Sustainable Development Goals are a waste of time, because even though you haven't hit them, it's still useful to have goals in mind. But the particular targets, the indicators, probably need to be rethought in the context of a rapidly changing world. And I wonder, how is it possible to create policy and regulation designed to achieve Sustainable Development Goals? Is it plausible, given the incredible complexity, interdisciplinarity that is inherent in the goals? Like for a carbon target, it's relatively a straightforward thing to do. So you can say, we're going to limit emissions and we're going to regulate them, but you can't really do that across all of these complex issues of diversity, equality, gender, environmental impacts, all these really complicated interactions. So you want to achieve these goals, but how are you going to do it? I appreciate the comments on local solutions, and I think it's also true that globally, you need to think globally as well as locally, because some of the goals are indeed global issues. So climate change, you cannot address locally. So you need a global approach for some of them. Okay, just a last little point is about I guess accessibility of the Sustainable Development Goals when you're trying to assess a strategy, a project like Simon was talking about, whatever you're trying to do. These 17 goals, they're pretty complex, and as everyone pointed out, there's a lot of interactions between them. They're very interdisciplinary, so you need incredible expertise to be able to comment on them for a specific project. I would argue that expertise does not exist at the level it needs to deliver sustainable development at local level. When we look at what's out there, you see focused research, like looking at one of the SDGs on a particular topic, and you see some studies bringing them all together, but they're still presented out of context of a systemic transition. So a huge challenge of scales, disciplines, and expertise required. Just finally, there's this interesting development of these 6 entry points to the SDGs. So going from those 17, so trying to refocus them into 6 entry points. So if I'm thinking about climate, this is how I go about doing it, whilst also considering the other SDGs. So, and that's a new development which has been put forward in a Nature paper in July this year, which was referenced in my presentation. So perhaps there are opportunities for simplification to make this more plausible. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Adam. That was very, very interesting to hear. Thanks for provoking us. Do you think the 6 entry points you mentioned, so you just answered this quite at the end of your talk right now, these are the proposal for simplification on the models in a way to drive policies. So your idea is that if you make the 17 goals into something easier, simpler to assess, to measure, to quantify, then they could become a tool for policymakers, and they could drive policies. Is that your opinion?
But that's I mean, it's not a bad summary, but I think, you know, simplification isn't really possible, because in reality you do need to think about all of these issues, and you can't get away from one of them. It doesn't work like that. What the entry points do is make the SDGs more accessible for an organization trying to assess their performance against them. So they have this entry point, and you know, they are more aware of the interactions and complexities with regard to their main topic. So therefore can make a better analysis more quickly. I think it's an emerging area, and it's coming out of the UN meetings on the SDGs about updating them. So I think it's just worth watching that space.
Right. Now, in another perspective, I believe the SDGs, which are quite recent in our history, right? And they're very, very recent in this long scale of research and time in scientific communication. We could say that recently they are being used more and more as to support the speech or the discourse on sustainable development. So people actually recognize like these colors and the ring and the 17 goals. This is becoming more and more popular and also accessible, not just for us in academia or researchers or the industry, but even to the public in general. Now, Karen mentioned that she thinks the world is a very complex place, sometimes chaotic in terms of ideas. Do you all think that these SDGs, as a support for an idea, as a framework to support an idea, are they useful to generate a positive public perception on the topic of climate changing? Are they a powerful tool for communication, to convince people that this is a problem? These are the clear ways and the clear vectors to be tackled. And do you think the SDGs, this language of this structure of SDGs, are they strong enough to withstand criticism and in a long run, and to serve as a model or to serve as a structure for this worldwide comprehension of sustainable development? For example, those who contend the 17 goals, is there a risk that in maybe 10, 20 years' time, we're going to just flush them out and notice that this framework of ideas did not work to convince people about these goals? Do you guys have any opinion on that question? Just open your microphones freely. Go on, Marcus Bookridge, you're muted. If you would like to say, just open your microphone and go on.
I would like to comment on Adam. I agree with Adam that the SDGs are a means and not an end. It's something that we are using now that has to be perfected. I would like to bring another issue, that is the politics. I think the political regimes in the world. I think this is very important. Even with the entrances that Adam is talking about, this is a top-down approach, right? What I presented is a bottom-up approach. It touches a bit on what Simon presented, that is how to follow the implementation. And somebody asked that, I think was I don't know if it was Ed Wilson who asked how to measure the implementation. So in the end, the measure, what is going to say whether the SDGs are working or not is if people are living better or not, right? If they have a better environment, if they have better food, if they have better health, if the combination of all that is in balance, right? Is well balanced, then we have a higher sustainability level. But there is no paradise. There is no paradise. We're not going to reach a nirvana of sustainability. But we can try to do it using the tools we have now. But then just coming back a little to the regimes, like for example, if you take China now, it is a top-down system, so they can take the entries in the SDGs and tell people to do that. If they don't do, they will be killed or they will be arrested, right? This is one way to do it. But you will have to arrest people, you will have to kill people, and many people will be killed because the decisions are never perfect, right? If you do that in places that are democracies, and these democracies are science-based, like the UK, for example, which is one of the best examples we have in the planet, then the probability of reaching a place that is near to this nirvana could be higher, right? Theoretically. I would like to bring this to the discussion just as a challenge for you, provocation.
Can I go now?
Yep. Go on.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think the SDGs are a framework and they are aspirational. And as aspirational is something that you will never really achieve completely, but it is a direction. Before that, they had the Millennium Development Goals, which were in place from 2000 to 2015. And well, we didn't eliminate the hunger, or we didn't solve the problem of poverty. It's still part of the next 15 years. So they were transformed in the Sustainable Development Goals. They are there again. But that doesn't mean that we didn't get to some point in these indicators getting better. The Brazilian indicators were much better because we had the MDs, it's the MDGs, I don't know what, the Millennium Development Goals. Okay, so I think there's always this challenge. They are going to be aspirational. Yes, of course, there are things that the countries have committed to, and they are not going to get there. And really, that's a great impact. But at least I think there's something that is there, and more. And something like Marco said, I think that it's becoming more popular. So everybody is starting to talk about that, and they're being more aware. And that's the way where you make, the public perception and the people take part on it. Yes, that's what I would like to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Just go on.
I would just like to add that, yes, I think that the sustainability and the SDGs, it's very much evolving concept, really, isn't it? In an area is able to handle complexity, whether it's ants or other natural systems. But as our awareness collectively improves of the different artifacts and dimensions of sustainability, then in time the frameworks will likely change. And as Karen says, the Millennium Development Goals, the SDGs, well, I guess, in a month or so's time, we'll only be 9 years away from the 2030 target. So will there be a new incarnation of the SDGs? And if there is, maybe it needs to incorporate the kind of approach that Adam mentioned about having the entry points. And so I suspect that the framework will continue to evolve and emerge over time as we develop an improved understanding of that complexity. And then the other theme as well, which a number of people have spoken about, is that point about translating the national level targets down to the local level. And we can think about the SDGs being more accessible to people working within companies, people working at the coalface, so to speak. And that's what we've tried to tackle that point in thinking about how to measure SDGs on projects. But it's really strengthening that interconnection or linkage from international, national, down through organizational, maybe even program to project, and being able to show that linkage. And that's a way that you can demonstrate in real world activities within projects and businesses how they're aligning with the SDGs. But yes, I do see the point as well that they are aspirational, but they are also very worthy targets that we all can head towards.
Good. Anyone else would like to add in? I know Stelvia has to leave us in a few minutes. Stelvia, I would like, don't leave just now. I'd like to hear you if you have the time, but if you do not have the time to say goodbye, thank you very much for your time and participation today, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so let's use your
minutes,
time.
so
If you'd like to make any comments now, please do make use of this time.
I just want to say that, yeah, I'm very pleased with all the comments, and I think the issues raised were very insightful indeed. Personally, I deal with a lot of what I call food soldiers, so I pay attention to their perspective and the challenges in implementing SDGs. And we ran a workshop in Sao Paulo with people that are in the really close to the battle, and they do see sometimes a lot of perhaps a top-down approach and difficulty in understanding the meaning of the SDGs. And I think that a closer communication between this bottom-up and top-down would have a huge benefit in terms of achieving some concrete, results.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you very much.
What I have to say.
Something that I heard a lot today in your talks is about this interdependence of the goals, of the SDG goals. So this non-linearity interaction between them, that you may push one, the other one will diminish, and you then put all your efforts in solving one, the other will increase or even get worse. Now, I believe that this non-linear behavior, or this interconnection between the goals, is an object of research in itself, as became clear from various presentations. Understanding how they are connected and how they affect each other is a big problem in itself. But if you take this framework, which is a global aspiration, as we have just mentioned recently, and bring this to a local level, where actually people are, where they live, and where they make policies, their governments and actually work, you might have different balances of importance between the goals. And of course, these different balance between the goals, depending on the culture, the local culture, on top of the non-linearity of the interaction, might result in completely different optimized or different targets if you project this in a global scale. How do we take that into account? Understanding how this non-linearity works and how each local community or culture should tackle individual problems and balance the overall. Is there an overall positive value, an overall positive goal? Can you say that this intensity of colors is the best one, or the optimized matrix of SDGs? Do you have this anything to comment on that?
Can I say so? I can go.
Yeah. Sure. Go for it. Yeah.
This is exactly what we call stakeholder ambiguity, and it's very complicated. It's even more complicated than we think, because it's not only different objectives and interests, but also there are hidden objectives and hidden interests, so which are very difficult to identify. So even if you ask some stakeholders why and what are their priorities, they may not say, or say something when it's actually something else. So this is one of the biggest challenges in dealing with social legitimacy. But in our experience, the bright side is if you establish trust in a way that you don't arrive and say, here, do this. That's a bad strategy. If you come to those communities that are going to be affected or are going to affect whatever technology is at stake, or SDG that is at stake, and say, how can we do this? That is much more possible. And in that, I know that some people have asked that how can we do this? Don't we create a lot of controversy, like opening a Pandora box? Well, you can take the initiative to identify which stakeholders need to be considered and ask, how do you see this SDG or technology as an opportunity? What kind of opportunities do you see coming out? What kind of challenges do you see coming out of that? And fortunately, we have seen that we arrive into an agreement or into repetition of key issues earlier than we thought we're going to be. So it seems very daunting, but once you do that, it's possible to identify issues that clearly need to be addressed first. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Stelvia. Marcos, yep.
Can I show you just a couple of slides? I will not make a presentation, just to show you what we did.
Please do.
To answer Gustavo's question.
Send up your screen, yeah. Just
during the pandemic, I'm doing that. During the pandemic, we did an analysis of the city to see the impact on the city. And this can be used with the SDGs as well, although we didn't use the SDGs yet, but we are going to do it. So, excuse the UK friends, excuse me, is in Portuguese, but I'll try to translate very quickly. We took 19 variables available from the city, and they are classified environmental conditions. Let me get my laser pointer here. Environmental conditions, housing, sanitation conditions, mobility, criminal patterns, and populational profile. I don't have time to go to the details. I promise you just to show you what we did. We have a software that we have developed ourselves that we do network analysis. This works well for a small number of variables, not for a high number of variables. But then you can see the city of São Paulo here. It is divided in 8 different patterns. And we have a different network for every pattern, right? We use, and you can actually classify these patterns depending on several different connections among the variables, right? These answer your questions. And when you look at the pandemic, you see the networks here. The networks are not the networks of the effect of the pandemic in São Paulo they're different in every one of the 8 regions, and they are not dependent on one single variable, but a combination of variables. So I think the SDGs, I will stop now. I think the SDGs can be approached with that. We are now working on that so that we can do a top-down analysis. But we will have to put also in this account, we have to bring in this account the opinion of the people and the aspirations. And this will be very complicated, but complexity is complicated, right? So we will have to deal with that and develop methods to deal with it.
Thanks, quite interesting. Of course,
provocation.
Yeah, good provocation. There's the challenge of leaving this subjective qualitative assessment of the goals and, of course, going into the metrics, right? Create proper metrics for all of them and see how strong you are in each direction, yeah.
Using science, using numbers.
Exactly. Yeah, create the science, yeah, developing the science that Adam said it does not exist yet, and I agree with him, yeah. It's,
of course, limited because we cannot look at all the variables, but at least we can see a little bit more clearly some more variables than a single variable, and solve problems not using silver bullets, but using complex analysis.
It's a true complex system, yeah. Well, who else would like to comment on that? I think we're coming to an end of our discussion, but any other comments? No? Okay. Now, as a final comment, I would like to bring one final topic here, which of course is related to our agenda for today, the university, the academia role in this triple helix, considering the SDGs. And Flavio mentioned a bit in his talk the role of the higher education institutions. Now, do you believe that taking this non-linearity, cultural level, science in development, aspirational, everything that we talked, do you think the university or academia as a whole is necessary to legitimize the SDGs to the society? Do you think academia plays a role in being a voice in this cacophony of ideas that some said would be chaotic? Do you think academia should play this role? And in another point, I believe that academia could embrace this speech, this language, this colorful language of SDGs to express itself, to be this voice. But do you think that these frameworks should then feed in and change the structure of the universities? For example, changing the way we propose research works, the way we evaluate which ones are more interesting or even more important at that specific moment, or to go even further, do you think our universities should be rearranged, not in terms of faculties anymore or schools, but in terms perhaps of 17 development goal areas? Is that, of course, that's a provocation, but what would be your view from the academic university perspective on the SDGs? Should we give ourselves to the SDGs in that level? Final comments. Yeah.
Yes, well, I think that academia certainly has a role to play there in terms of providing evidence-based analysis and scientific research. So it's a strong component there, but I do like your triple helix approach of really engaging in these grand global challenges, of essentially bringing the stakeholders into the problem set, into the project. So not just universities pushing out scientific research, working on its own as an ivory tower, but working jointly with industry, which is open innovation, and engaging with government stakeholders. It's much more likely to embed the scientific results eventually with that kind of joint working. And a brief comment on your point about academia being reorganized. Well, that would be a very disruptive approach to close down the Department of Biology and Materials Science and have the 17 SDG departments. But maybe there's a halfway house, because we can think of universities having centers and institutes which operate as a kind of a matrix going across the academic departments. So it's you already have the RCGI and the SGI. The next version would be the 17 centers and institutes, which would still kind of feed across or feed from physics, chemical engineering, and other departments. So maybe there is a degree of value in that kind.
Good. I think we lost a bit of connection with Simon, but we could understand your final point, Simon. Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you. Adam, you'd like to comment after Simon?
Just very briefly, because I think we're running out of time, right? But if you propose such a restructuring of universities at Imperial, you'd make yourself universally unpopular very quickly.
For
sure. Anyway, I think Simon's point is a very, very good one about addressing these issues via other structures within universities. But the only thing I want to add is I think that the universities have a very important role to play, obviously, in education of the next generation of scientists and engineers. So it's not only the research and evidence that we push out, it's also who are we educating and how are we doing it. So incorporating these ideas into curriculums, but also ensuring that recruitment of students follows equality, diversity, and inclusion principles. So to make sure would help addressing a lot of the SDGs.
Thanks for your final words as well, Adam. Of course, this is just a first discussion, a first conversation. We're not supposed to answer or go deep into any points, but of course, this will feed in our relationship between the two centers to progress discussing in these topics. Now, Professor Bukaric, Marcos, would you like to make your final comments? Yep, there we go.
Yes. Well, I already brought, I think, the main idea, what I think about the university. The university is the main thrower of solutions into the primordial soup of ideas that can be combined with the aspirations of the population. I think what is missing is the connection. The university, at least here, I think the UK does it much better. You write much more books and you are much better than us. I say that because I studied there, right, in Scotland, right? But the system is much more mature. But in Brazil, we need this connection with the society. Society has to understand. So this point of on the society pointing a problem and we having the solutions and identifying the connections. I think this is key, and bringing the politicians as well to the game, and sitting at the table, the three parts, and producing solutions. I think this is the way. It will have to take the top down and the bottom up at the same time and dealing with complexity. It will be very difficult. It's not only for climate change, it's for everything, for crime, for whatever problem we have, and even problems outside the city. I talk more about the city, but the problems outside the city could also benefit from this kind of technology that we are developing together, which is, the name of this is transdisciplinarity.
Very well, thank you, Marcos. Flavio, would you like to add your final comments and words?
Sure. Thank you. Actually, as I mentioned in my presentation, not only we can help the SDGs, but the SDGs can help us, right? To get to a better position, get a better university, actually, better higher institutional organizations. And I would like to add that these changes that I agree with Simon and Adam that if we should not force the changes, but what I can see is that these changes have been happening more bottom up than top down. We can see lots and lots of initiatives from faculty, from students that are related to the SDGs, even without the management, the university management, forcing them to do. So I have a optimistic
Thank you,
view.
Flavio. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Karen, now your final words.
Well, I think very interesting, and I do agree with what Simon, Adam, and Flavio and Marcos said. What I would add when Adam says that we have to include diversity and really live, on my understanding, we have to live the SDGs in practice, not only teach them, but really absorb them in the day-to-day, the living inside the campus or in the university, already practicing what we preach, like the kind of thing. The other thing I would mention is the transdisciplinary situation of the SDGs. So maybe coupling only it individually, each SDG, like in a center to study that specific SDG, maybe the richness you have is really of having the discussion with them together, because they impact on one and each other. So it's important to understand it in this broad view. I know it's complex, and of course it's easier when we cut in parts but also understanding this with the broad view and the impact with one another is very important. And I think the role of university is to provoke this kind of reflection in business, in government, in society, and within its own also academia, because sometimes we talk about the others, but we don't consider ourselves part of this. So reflecting on this kind of situation. That's why I think the triple helix is a good approach, because it's always challenging. It leads to a lot of conflict and teach positioning, but also enrich the discussion. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Karen. And with that, I think we come to an end with our panel. Thank you very much, Flavio, Karen, Marcos, Simon, Adam, and Stelvia, who joined us today. Thank you for your time, for sharing your thoughts. And I think this has been a very enriching panel of discussions, just a starting point. And this is just the first session on the triple helix model, of course, today, here in academia. Thank you very, very much. I will now send you backstage again. Thank you, Simon, Flavio. Thank you, Marcos. Thank you, Karen. And I would like to invite now Adam and Julio as the directors of the RCGI and SGI, just to say goodbye, their final words, and of course, their impression of this event. I will start with Adam, and then I'll pass it on to Julio.
Thanks, Gustavo. Well, I think great to see an event like this happening. I think it's just the ongoing collaboration between the UK and Brazil on these topics is really excellent to see. Like I said at the beginning, I think it has been almost 10 years since we started talking about these collaborations, and I know that various relationships between USP and Imperial go back a lot further than that as well. So I'd just like to say thank you very much to everyone for attending and to all the speakers. I think there was a range of really useful comments there, and I certainly learned some things, and we'll be trying to take that forward in our future collaborations. So thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Julio?
Well, thank you to everybody, and well, congratulations for organizing this webinar. I would say congratulations to Gustavo, to Karen. And from what I just learned as a scientific director of the center, there are some words that helps me to organize my ideas. And then SDGs with complexity is a clear point. Complexity, we have to attack using some kind of techniques. I'm a guy from fluid mechanics, and then in fluid mechanics, when you have a complex result, a complex fluid flow, we try to organize, or we try to identify what's called coherent structures. That are exactly what Marco Bucharich mentioned regarding the patterns that he tried to identify. Another word that, and then coherent structures, patterns, and in order to try to organize our ideas to tackle these SDGs and all the problems that are related, and also the NDCs, is a great challenge. And then we are going to use those special techniques. We have to think in a transdisciplinary way, as it has been said as well. And another point is something that Karen said, just regarding those inspirational thoughts that, well, of course, we are not going to fulfill all the 17 SDGs by the end of this decade. But we have to think in terms of inspiration, in trying to get as closer as possible of the fulfillment of each of those SDGs. And then I'm very glad because, as I said in the beginning when I opened this webinar, now RCGI, we are starting a new phase, and this new phase, we are going to have 5 new programs, nature-based solutions. We are going to have another program, CCU, carbon capture and utilization, BECS, bioenergy, carbon capture and storage, greenhouse gas, and at last, advocacy. That's the 5th program. And then this was some kind that we were thinking since last year. Adam Hawks is part of the International Advisory Panel. It was something that we have been discussing a lot in the past 12 months. And then this is going to be the start. It's going to be announced soon. And hopefully, as Karen and Gustavo organize this series, we are going to have other webinars like this. And I'd like to thank you all, and I count with your help to help us and to work collaboratively as a university, as a center, to achieve or to be closer as possible to the achievement of each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julio. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for your time, and thank you for staying with us so late. Thank you. Now, I would like to thank you for joining us today. Thank you for this participation in the first session of the Triple Helix series. This is just a welcome to what's coming next. Of course, today, we would like to thank especially our partners from Imperial College, from the London South Bank University, and from the University of Surrey, who joined us in the first session regarding universities and the SDGs. What's coming next? There's session 2 on government, there's session 3 on companies, and then there's session 4, joining the whole discussion in the Triple Helix synthesis coming up next year. Okay, so please do follow our YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell, follow us on Facebook, and subscribe to our newsletter so you can be informed of more sessions like this. And also, please do feel free to share this broadcast on social media so more people who are interested in this topic could be reached out. Finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors once more, to FAPESP and Shell for setting up these centers and for feeding us with good ideas and challenges. And if you'd like to know more about the SGI and RCGI, just visit the web pages, and also you'll find links below this presentation, this broadcast as well. Right, we'd like to now thank you for watching, for staying with us, and also for participating in our discussions with comments, and hope to see you next time.